Hey, we started a sermon series last week on Genesis, and it's kind of a weird one. It's a weird story because it's not what is Genesis saying to us, it's what's Genesis saying to the Israelites, because that's who the book was written to. We read the Bible wrong. We open it up like it's a book written to us, when actually all of these books were written to someone else back then. And what we're doing is we are reading what is Paul saying to the Philippians, and then from that we go, okay, then what do I believe? And we gather information about it. And sometimes the connection's so much it doesn't really matter. You can read it like it's written to you. But other times it gives you some more insight if you think about who this message was for. And the book of Genesis was written to Israelites who more than likely were scared to death of God. Honest, have you ever been scared of God? I mean scared of Him. Anyone in here scared of God? You liars. There's a couple hands. Surely you've been scared at some point. Maybe not, but I believe there's a lot of people, especially in Stoddard County. I believe there are a lot of people who are scared to death of God. I'm not talking about having a healthy fear of Him. Having fear and respect of God, that's actually a good thing. You want to have some fear of God. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being so scared you want nothing to do with Him. You're so scared that if you walk in, hellfire and brimstone, you're going to die at the door, okay? This lightning's going to come down and strike, and you're gone. Do you know anyone at least that might have that fear? They want nothing to do with God and actually, I kind of get where people are coming from. God is scary. He is. He is so powerful. His power is kind of scary. I mean, He created everything, and He could wipe it out with a thought. He's like, oh, it's like, I would hate that power. What if I had the wrong thought go through my head? All of a sudden, oh no, they want my house. God, He can just wipe things out. He's so powerful that we call His anger wrath. Have you ever called a person's anger wrath? We don't even get that angry. So yeah, there might be some good reason to have some fear and to be a little bit scared of God. His anger is very fierce. His ways. Have you ever read some of these stories in the Old Testament? You're like, oh man, this God means business. Whoa, I mean, he just wiped some people out. Can you believe it? So I think some people have fear of, and they're scared of Him for some good reason. He is a God that punishes sin. He's this holy, just, and perfect God. And if He punishes sin, and I'm living in a sinful world, and I've got sin kind of all around me and in me, I mean, He can be scary. I get it. God's a scary God. If for no other reason, I think a lot of people can be scared of Him just because He's mysterious. You can't control Him. There's a lot of unknown there, and it's like, oh, what's this God going to be like, and what's He going to do to me? God can and is kind of scary. And I believe that the Israelites had every reason to be scared to death of God. If you don't know, the Israelites were slaves in Egypt for years, and God sent a prophet named Moses to free them. So all the Israelites, they're in Egypt, and here comes a prophet, and he's like, hey, God's going to come in and help you guys escape. Like, oh, okay. Think of what they knew about God through all this. This is what God's like, okay, Israelites? He's the type of God that sends a plague of blood, and He'll turn the Nile River into a river of blood. Does it sound like a God that you want to cuddle with? It sounds kind of scary. He does it to our enemies, but He wiped out the Nile River. He's a God that that sends a plague of frogs. I was wondering, how many frogs do you have to have in your house to consider it a plague? One, you're just one frog, you have a plague of frogs. I was wondering that. It's like, is 3 enough to go, oh no, I have a plague of frogs. Where are all these frogs coming from? It's like a plague of frogs. That's crazy. Plague of lice. Ew. A plague of lice sent from God as a punishment. That's what God's like. Or how about this? A plague of flies. You look out, you can't even see. It's just dark. All these flies everywhere. Plague of livestock, where all your livestock just start dying. How many animals do you have to lose for it to be considered a plague? Boils. Boils on everyone's body that's so bad that it's causing people to scream out in pain. Sent from God. Or hail. It hailed this last week, didn't it? Yeah, I was sitting there minding my own business, and Rachel looks out and goes, hey, we didn't bring the car in the garage. So she goes to start doing it. So I get upset with her. I'm like, no, you don't do it. I'm supposed to do it. I'm the man, you know. And then I'm going out going, why didn't I just let her do it? Oh, man. All the hail. A plague of hail. So powerful, it stripped everything off the trees. That's God. Or how about this? A plague of locusts. Eating everything in sight. Going through and eating all your crops. Is there anything you have left after all this? Do you have any animals left? Do you have all your livestock die? You got boils on your body. You don't have your health. I mean, this is a terrible God, isn't it? And then finally, this plague of darkness, 24 hours, all day long, can't see, no sun, where'd it go? A plague of death, the firstborn in every household dead. Everyone wakes up and there's so much screaming, you can hear it for miles. And this is happening to the Israelites' enemies. But don't you have to kind of wonder what the Israelites are thinking of God through all this? I mean, am I going to have fun worshiping this God when all this is said and done? And then the Israelites leave. They leave and they come to the Red Sea and they turn around. The Egyptians change their mind. Here comes the army. They go, what do we do? Moses parts the Red Sea. They walk through it. They get to the other side. They turn. They're like, oh no, here they come. What are we going to do? And Moses just holds his hand up and God lets it go. Boom! Enemies dead, drowned in the Red Sea. Now, the Israelites are not like scared of this. Do you know what they did? They stood on the shore and they wrote songs. They're on the shore and they're like, hey, I have a good one. They're writing songs and singing and dancing and celebrating. Their enemies are dead. Ha ha. But then they walk and they come to the Mount Sinai. All this is going to be important. We're going to actually get to Genesis in a second. They get to Mount Sinai. They come, and this mountain is shaking. It's on fire. There's smoke everywhere. There's lightning and thunder. And they hear these 10 commandments said out loud. And they're scared. And they went over to Moses, and they said, speak to us yourself, and we'll listen. Don't have God speak to us, or we'll die. And Moses said, do not be afraid. God has done this so the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning. Then Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. And so these Israelites, they're scared to death of God. Wouldn't you be? Haven't you ever read like the Old Testament and went, is this the same God that's in the New Testament? I mean, man, some of this stuff seems so harsh. Granted, there's a lot more love in the Old Testament than we realize, and there's a lot of harsh stuff in the New Testament that we don't harp on too. But God's the scary, powerful God, and the Israelites, they're going, who is this guy? Will I ever come close to him? And this is the time between Mount Sinai and the Promised Land that these Israelites receive the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis, it's all about genealogies. That's your favorite part of the Bible, I bet. I bet you just go through, oh, this person begot this person. I just love that. No, you don't care. You don't care about genealogies. You're reading through this going, oh, this is boring. What in the world? But the Israelites loved it. This is their heritage, and they loved it because it was their inheritance. I went to visit my Aunt Eileen. This is a few years ago. I came into her house, and I'm talking to family members. Everyone's there. A lot of noise in the background. I looked over, and there was a Post-it note on the television. I'm talking, and I'm like, and I notice the Post-it note, and I just keep talking. I look over at it. It's my cousin's name written there. So wrote his name on the Post-it note for some reason, slapped it on the TV. I keep talking. She had this giant mirror in her living room that just kind of leaned against the wall. There's a Post-it note on the mirror. I look over, it's my other cousin's name. So I said, what's with all the Post-it notes? My aunt said, oh, it's nothing, just something silly. I said, oh. I start looking around, they're everywhere. They're like on the refrigerator, they're on like picture frames, they're on the computer, it's on the back of the couch. I'm going, wait, what are these Post-it notes? They were having a discussion. They're just goofing off about when I die, who gets the inheritance. And so they started to say that they're going to decide who gets it early. And so I'm like, oh no. So I missed the boat here, I guess. I didn't really, I wasn't expecting anything from my aunt anyways. But so all the cousins were like, hey, I want this. And they started labeling it so that she would know, pass this over to me. It's one thing to get a television in an inheritance. It's one thing to get a mirror. It's another thing to get a picture frame. Imagine if your inheritance was a promise from God, passed from one generation to the next, If because I was a Kleeman, and God promised all those Kleemans something, oh man, what is that promise? I love being a Kleeman. Here it comes, Lord. That's my promise. That's what the Israelites had, a promise from God. That's their inheritance. And the book of Genesis is evidence. It's proof. This is who I'm a descendant of. It's broken into 4 parts. There's the story of God to Adam, who's the first key figure. And then from Adam to Noah, who's number 2. And then from Noah to Abraham, number 3. And then Abraham to Jacob. And these 4 individuals had promises, not just to themselves, but to their descendants. And so Noah was heard by the Israelites who are scared of God. And they hear this message, this promise that God had given to Noah and his offspring. Listen to what it is. Genesis chapter 9, verse 8 to 11. Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, I now establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds and the livestock and all the wild animals, all those who came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Here it is. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. Now, this connection that I'm making right now, it's never expressed in the Bible, because I think it was too obvious for them to make. I think the connection was just in their heads. They got it. They are hearing, wait, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Noah, he was surrounded by evil. That's what we were in Egypt. We were surrounded by our enemies, by people who didn't believe. And here, Noah was favored by God and rescued, told to build this ark, and this flood water came, and God saved them through the water. Is it possible that the Israelites heard this story and didn't think about the Red Sea? Is that even possible? Weren't they going, yeah, the Red Sea. I think this connection was obvious to them. And then God, he saved us. We come all the way through it. And now here God is saying, and Noah, you and all your descendants, I'm not going to destroy you. I'm going to withhold my anger because I want to be close to you. I'm not going to wipe you out. I'm not going to fry you when you walk in the door. I'm making a choice. I want to be with you. Don't be scared of me. I think this is a promise that would have really connected to the Israelites at a time when they needed to hear that message. Now, imagine if you were a junior high boy at a dance, and you're at one side of the room, and you look over across the dance floor, and there is this real beautiful, cute girl. It is impossible. What junior high boy would get up the nerve to walk across the dance floor to ask her to dance? No one. Junior high boys don't do that. You don't have the courage to walk all the way over there. Do you know why? She might turn you down. And the risk of getting turned down is overwhelming. You're not going to walk over there and say, hey, do you want to turn me down in front of everyone right now, right after I walk across the dance floor? Yes, okay, just making sure. You don't want to do that. So you stay away. You stay away because it's scary. But what if I walked over to you? You're still a junior high boy, but this time I sit down with you and I pull out a letter and say, hey, she wrote this about you. She thinks you're cute. She likes you. And look, she said, if he ever asked me to dance, look, she wrote, I promise I will always say yes. Can you believe that? Yeah, look, she signed her name right there. And there she is right now. Oh, here comes the courage now. Oh, I can do this. She's going to say yes. I know she will. She said she promised. Oh, I'll pull this out and prove it to her if she turns me down. I'm walking across there. That gives you courage to approach her. And here we have a God that has promised to human beings in the midst of all of our sin and mistake, and I bet you've blown it a lot. But God said, you know what? I promise you, Noah, and I promise all of your descendants, I'm not just going to wipe you out whenever you sin. I'm not just going to take you off the planet and go, forget you. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to withhold my anger, and I'm going to let you come, and I'm going to say yes. Yes, I want to be with you too. Yes, I want you to get to know me. Let's have a relationship. Let's connect. That's the promise, passed from one generation to the next. And for the Israelites, they got this message and they're like, wow, I'm a descendant of Noah. I'm a descendant of Adam. That means I'm supposed to be a ruler in this world. And I'm a descendant of Noah. That means God is not going to be done with me before our relationship even begins. God loves you. And if you find yourself scared of God and you're going, I don't know if I could kneel before him. I don't know if I could go in and I can pray to this God or to try to approach him. I don't know. I'm just going to distance myself. I want you to know you do not have to be afraid because of the very promise of God. Now, a lot of promises are made not just with words, but sometimes you seal a promise, which is what God did in Genesis. He sealed this promise. I've been a part of a lot of weddings. I haven't been a part of a lot of engagements. There was someone, though, a man, who came and asked me if he could propose at church. Honestly, if it was anyone else, I probably would have told him no. I've had young people before come and say, hey, I'm proposing to my girlfriend. I was thinking we could do it at church. I'm like, no, don't do it at church. I'd rather you take her out to a nice restaurant, find some romantic hill somewhere, go do something else. I think you had to find something more beautiful and a different setting. That's just me. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but I couldn't turn down this man. 75 years old. He is 75. His wife had died. His best friend had died, and his best friend had a wife who had been a member of our church for years. She was a few years younger. But Roger started dating his best friend's wife after he had died. They started to get to know each other. He started to attend our church even more. And it was so cute. It really was. It was like they were school kids. I mean, she was so flattered that he had interest in her. They had known each other since high school. And she was like, oh, and she's like giddy almost. It was so fun. Watching them come in the door, they would flirt with each other again. It was like this isn't supposed to happen. And I just loved it. And so when Roger came over and told me his idea, I'd love to propose to her at church. Sure. Okay, well, how can I help? And he said, well, this is what I was thinking. He said, I haven't joined your church yet. And at this church, we made it this big moment. You know, it's a big invitation time. You'd come up front and we'd like turn you around and we'd have you say this big confession of faith. I believe in Jesus Christ, you know, and then we'd talk about the importance of community, how we need each other to hold each other accountable and encourage each other and love each other. And so it was like this big moment. So he said, I'll do that and I'll talk her into coming up with me just to support me. And then I'll turn and I'll propose to her. It's like, awesome. This is going to be so cute. I'm looking forward to it. That's great. Sunday comes. He comes up. He walks up the steps with her. And we talk about membership, which means nothing now because they're getting ready to propose. You know, it's like, oh, yeah, this is important. Well, I'm getting ready to get on this other thing, right? And finally I step aside. He turns and looks at her and he says, now, Marilyn, you and I have been through a lot of heartache together. But now I'm so in love with you. And I'm nervous. And his body was shaking. He was so nervous. And he reached in, he pulled out a little box. And he pulled out this ring and his hands all shaking. And he put the box back and he gets down and he drops the ring. Now, I dropped things before. I don't know. This is like he threw it almost. I mean, this ring took off. He gets on his knees and boom, it goes down the stairs. It starts rolling down the aisles. We can't find the ring and everyone's like looking for it. And it turned into a stressful time and yet it was still cute. It was still so cute. You know, we exchange something precious as a reminder. We do something to seal a deal, and that's what God did with Noah. He sealed it. He sealed it with something that maybe we don't completely understand today. Genesis chapter 9, verse 12 to 17 says, and God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the water become a flood to destroy the earth. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on earth." I want to point out just a couple of things. First, I want to point this out with the rainbow, that the rainbow is not a message about diversity. It's a promise of God to be patient with us, to restrain himself so that he could be with us. That's the point of a rainbow. Second, in the Hebrew text, there's no word rain. Not with rainbow. It's just a bow. English, we call it a rainbow, but it's just a bow. This is important. The Hebrew word for bow is just a warrior's bow. That's all it says in the text. As we put it in the English, we added the rain part. It's the rainbow. It's just a warrior's bow. And I think that's important because God says, I'm going to put a weapon in the sky. And it's not going to be aimed at you, ready to destroy you anymore. I'm going to take the warrior's bow, I'm going to hang it up on the wall. In fact, it's going to be aimed in the opposite direction. You're safe. I'm putting my bow up. I'll take it down later. I'll take it down when all life is done, when we're done with this. But right now, my warrior's bow is hung up, and I'm here to spend time with you. Isn't that a beautiful symbol of God hanging up his weapon as a promise to not destroy you? And number 3, I have to point this out. It's a little bit odd, but I think that's what the text said. It's not for me. This is not a reminder for me. Hey, I just want you to know I'm not going to destroy you. This is a reminder for God. Isn't that weird? Where God says, hey, you know what? I'm going to put this in the sky. It's my wedding ring, God says. I'm putting it on right now. This is my symbol for myself so I can remember not to destroy you. Maybe I need to put up some of those like around me. Put up some symbols in my house to remind me not to destroy one of my kids. So it's like, you got off lucky. I just saw the sign. Okay, I forgot. I'm not supposed to destroy my kids. Isn't that kind of weird where God's going, I will remember it. I will look at this rainbow. I will look at this weapon, this warrior's bow, and I'll remember the promise I made is to restrain myself. It's to not wipe you out because of my great justice and power, but to be with you and to spend time with you and to get to know you. This promise, before God even said it, is just passing on that Adam promise a little bit more. He began in Genesis chapter 9 by saying, I'm going to repeat everything that's already been said in the first chapter. You've been created in God's image. Everything's for you. In fact, now you can even eat meat. I'll give you everything. And I'm not going to destroy you. I love you. I'm building you up. I'm putting up my bow. It's a reminder for me, don't be afraid. And when the Israelites heard this, I think they heard about a God who wanted to get closer to them. God wants to get closer to you. And I want to ask you today, if you have fear in your heart of God, and that fear is respect and love, then that's probably a good thing. But if the fear is the scared fear that God is going to wipe me out before I even begin my journey with him, I want you to know that's not what God wants. He loves you. And if you walk across the dance floor, he'll say yes.